Okay, it's our April 3rd program. Thank you, everybody for joining me here tonight. Uh, in the past, so as what I want to do is just first make a couple of announcements again of what's going on with the currency exchange. We don't have any specific updates other than I've shared with you in the past some of the stuff, in the newsletters of what's happening with what Ben Fulford is reporting, and all of those things are accumulating that are creating the change that is imperative for us for the funds to be released. But now, other than that, if you are still wanting to purchase more dong, folks, it's wide open. You can continue to send me the request to purchase more dong because here's what's happened. As I've reported maybe a month or so ago, the Texas processing office, they have the funds in their account, and those funds are invested in off-market trading platforms, and that money doubles every 2 to 4 months. That means there's more money available for us to come in. So right now they are not putting any limits on anybody about wanting to come into the program and us purchasing the dong from them. Again, you can purchase 1 million dong for $62, or I've got another default one of 5 million dong for $312. And then the dong is scheduled to pay out at $1.50, and all that money is there in the Texas processing account. It's in their funds, it's in their bank, and this money is there, and it's just they're going to have some surplus funds unless people come in and purchase some more. So they have more available for all of us. So if you want to increase it, that's fine. When I first started this project, in the first year, many of you turned in physical dong to me. And many people were turning in 40, 50, 60 million dong. So that's fine if you want to continue to accumulate what you have by purchasing the 5 million dong at a time. Right now, I do not have a limit. All I need is you need to send me an email to daveschmidt@msn.com because I need to have on record that you were requesting it. I didn't start the transaction. It starts with you first making the request. So if you would like to have some more dong, that is all available. Now, tonight, I want to talk about something, and also I'm going to share a video about what is called the Looking Glass Project. Now, what is so special about that? But before I get into that, hold on here. I'm going through. Yes, same emails as before, as Carlos there. I'm looking at the messages is what I'm doing, folks. Okay, so uh, in the past couple programs, I've been talking about the importance of awareness and consciousness, and how important it is for us to be familiar with those issues. Why is that? We're going through a massive, massive change in the energy of our earth and our environment. And this change is creating how people respond to the world around them. Now, I've shared what is called the dual earth system. There are even scientists, astrophysicists, etc., that are basically saying there's a very, very high probability there are two earths. Now, when you come from the intuitive sources, they will tell you that the two earths is dependent upon the vibration of your consciousness. For those who are living in high vibration, high energy in their thoughts coming from love, compassion, forgiveness, respect, humility, etc., those are the people that are vibrating in a higher consciousness state, and they are going to the higher vibrational earth. Now, when that transition takes place, I don't know. I've heard different sources say that transition will take place when you make your transition, i.e., when you die, or it's a possibility that we're already there. And because it depends upon how you view your life and how you experience your life. Now, those living in the lower vibration, those that are operating in hate, anger, anxiety, fear, lower vibrational thought patterns, they go off into the other earth. Now, those are different theories that different people have come up with, and it's primarily coming out of what I call the intuitive sources. But I agree with that because this is the era that we're making the transition. this video that I'm going to share with you is going to explain a little bit. It doesn't talk about it directly, but it gives you the basis and the foundation behind it about how we can have two different worlds. We have a choice of how we're going to live out our lives and of what we're going to do. Now, decades ago, there was this quiet project run by the government called the Looking Glass Project. What was the Looking Glass? There are different theories about how it came into being, but the one that's the most common is it was a basically like a large portal that had like a television screen on it, and it had a computer feed to it, and you could enter into the computer asking questions. And what the Looking Glass did, it let you see the future. It would show you the future of the different probabilities. Now, the story is this Looking Glass was on one of the UFOs that was either crashed or they shot down. And so the people who were quietly running the UFO projects were the ones who had access to this Looking Glass. And these people, they would ask questions of the Looking Glass. In essence, they could say, if we feed in a scenario of A, B, C, and D, what is going to be the outcome? And it would show you the outcomes of those probabilities, and it would give you the percentage of how that outcome becoming a reality. They were always able to see in advance the probabilities of what was coming their way as they would ask specific questions. But there was one thing that was really interesting about the Looking Glass. If they tried to go beyond the year 2012, they couldn't get anything. Because you see, there were different probabilities, there were different timelines that people were living on. As they asked questions of it, they show you, okay, this timeline is the probability scenario of those questions, or this timeline is the probability of those scenario questions you just asked. But when they went beyond 2012, all the issues of multiple timelines ended, and there was only one timeline. Regardless of what they asked, regardless of what they input, it all eventually ended up into the same scenario. And they were astounded by this, and they couldn't quite understand it. And it actually happened as the people who were running the Looking Glass Project, they got so scared of seeing what was happening after 2012 that they shut the Looking Glass down. And what was it that scared them? They saw their future as black hats, and that it was not a very good ending. And it scared the crap out of them because they were able to see, because see, prior to 2012, they could manipulate the outcome. After 2012, they could no longer do it. They could no longer manipulate the outcome. Now, also, there's a person here saying there was a movie on that subject and Ben Affleck was in it. And Terry Rodriguez is saying that's why the Simpsons know about a future events a lot. They do. Because see, the people who basically, I wouldn't be surprised if the people who wrote the Simpsons or were in Pentagon had access to the Looking Glass. But the Looking Glass was shut down. Now, I don't know when, but it was shut down prior to 2012. And what is it that's so significant about 2012? 2012 was a massive shift and change in the energy coming into Earth. We moved from a denser energy into what was called a lighter energy. In 2012, we moved into this scenario in this place in our solar system where the Earth was being bombarded by these light photons. And these light photons, light carries energy, and it was a higher vibrational energy that was coming into the Earth. Now, we don't always experience those, but it created the change in the energy that creates the outcome of scenarios. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to play this video for you that talks a little bit about it, and The video is about 12 minutes long. And for those of you that are listening, if there's a problem in the sound of the video, make sure you let me know, okay? So let's go. Here we go.
One of the caveats that I do have some personal information that I did get personally involved in was some information that had to do with the Stargates and Looking Glass, and more specifically the 2012 problem with those projects. The popular opinion of what's out there right now is that the project was shut down because there was a problem when we approached 2012. I've heard it described a number of ways, but to my knowledge, the problem is that the timelines converge on that point in time. And when you know enough about the Stargate projects and the Looking Glass project to know how string theory works and how the possibility of possibilities works and how making one choice over here doesn't necessarily mean that the other choice couldn't exist at the same time. But once you get your brain wrapped around this subject, you find out that at the end of 2012, in an easy way to put it, the choices that we make become less and less consequential to the future. And eventually we're pushed into this bottleneck of time, no matter which choice we make. And that's important to the people that had access to Looking Glass because they would use Looking Glass knowing the choices that they would make and the future would pop up. The big mistake was coming up with the possibility of future. And when we started using a computer to say, well, if we make this choice, it's 79% possible that this scenario happens, and 23% are possible or whatever, round numbers, that this scenario would happen. The understanding at the time was that was realistic. However, if you go down the road further and free will continues to exercise itself on this game, that 79% possibility sometimes changes very, very fast. But if you look at the situation in a point of time, it seems very realistic that that's the greatest possibility. What happened was people, very smart people, began to figure out that something big was coming up. Something that made it so all the possibilities of all the future scenarios of any choice, any possibility that was fed in and observed through the Looking Glass inherently ended up in the same future. And no decision, no possibility changed past a certain point. That's the big secret. All possible timelines lead to the same basic set of history in the future. That is what sends everybody that has all of the information, that knows everything, into a blind panic. The people that know everything about Looking Glass, that have gotten all the reports and all the information, the elites of the world, probably figured out that that was the end of the game. And nothing could be manipulated beyond that point. When I was in the military, it would have been before 97 when I got in trouble. One of my particular areas that I was amazingly intuitive about is problem solving / mission planning, or more specifically, taking a bad mission and fixing it. Certainly knowing how string theory and possible futures works makes it so you can work your mind very quickly to see the reality of what's happening and decide what decisions need to be made to change it for a particular outcome. At a certain point, after they're done hearing the computer tell them, this is what's going to happen over and over and over and over again, all they become focused on is, how do we fix it? What I do know is that I was called in and asked to solve this problem, this timeline contraction problem. And I eventually did my due diligence and did all the investigating and basically only had one piece of information, and that was reinforcement. The computer's right. The timelines will contract down to some inevitable thing. There is an inevitable event. It's been forecast, it's been predicted, it's been fed to us in a slop trough of what they want us to believe will happen. They don't actually have control over what happens. They only have control over the reaction, and it seems that no matter what they try to do to cause their desired reaction, it's going to have an opposite effect. Much, much easier for me to explain today what that process is as opposed to back then. If I had to give it a name, I would say it's the awakening process. It's an evolution of consciousness that cannot, will not, and no matter what decisions or possibilities are injected into the equation, eventually it all resolves down to us all learning the truth and becoming aware of this massive dam of lies that has been built that keep us from knowing massive volume of information that we should otherwise possess. Essentially what happened with Looking Glass, not only did they not want people to use it anymore because they knew it was just going to burp out the same thing, but at the same time they didn't want anybody else to know what it was saying. I'm sure. Because that information was a monumental concern when I was in the military about how to prevent this inevitability. Now, at first I thought it was end of the world. Now I see end of the world as end of their world. The biggest cherry on top of all this conversation would be a synopsis to say that if I could convince everybody out there that for all intents and purposes, what we believe to be true eventually becomes true. If somebody convinces us that a major disaster is going to happen in the very near future, a major disaster happens in the very near future. If we don't buy into that fear and accept that there's really nothing that we know is going to happen, and accept of whatever happens, that makes the convergence of the timelines happen as naturally as possible. Any attempts to try to go away from this one inevitable conclusion, I again see as a new beginning, an end of this reality, the beginning of something that we can't even possibly understand based on the level of our beliefs currently. But when all that information comes flooding out, there's going to be no denying what's true and what's a lie or what's illusion. Basically what we're experiencing right now is two master chess players sitting at the board. And one of them looks down at the board and sees that he's in checkmate in 7 moves. And he looks across at his opponent and he knows that his opponent sees it too. So there's no getting out of it. So at this point, the loser can only prolong the game. Both players know the game is over. It's only a matter of time before he does this, and then you're forced to do this, and then he's forced to do this, and eventually checkmate. We, as a race, if we could understand that the game is over, that based on the rules of the game, the bad guys have already lost, the good guys have already won. Yes, there's moves left on the table, but those moves are being forced by the player that is going to win. The only way that checkmate can't happen is if the player that's winning makes a mistake. But from all of the information that I've gathered, all of the information that's been given, all of the information that's been vetted to me, it seems pretty obvious that the good guy player on the side of the chessboard knows exactly what has to be done to win the game. And so at this point, any mistake would be all but impossible. But again, you really have to understand the game to know that the guy that's losing is lost. And I'm sure most people sitting watching a chess match between two advanced chess players know the game's over long after the two players know it's over. Because they can't see the board and see that there's only 7 moves left.
What they're basically talking about is the power of human thought, the power of human consciousness. And this shift and change came at the 2012 event. Now, as I said before, we haven't necessarily been experiencing it or directly feeling it, but it's there. And here we are now. Now, first of all, remember, this video was done a good 6 to 10 years before 2012. And I remember I had seen that video before, and if I forgot the guy's name, but he's a very, very advanced person. It might be Bob Lahar, I think might be his name. I'm not exactly sure. But but he was a very, very advanced person dealing with the future probabilities. He was working for basically those that we would call the cabal that understood and knew the world beyond what was called the conventional world. Okay. What he has said that this shift and change has happened, and we're now 12 years out from 2012. And what's really interesting to me is prior to 2012, if you would have asked me about this stuff, presented this stuff to me, I'd say, huh? What? I would have thought all this was absolutely crazy. My life went through a massive shift during the 2012 timeline. At that point is when I started waking up. I started learning these things. All these things about awareness, consciousness, the advanced state, the black hats versus the white hats, all of this stuff is what's been coming new to us since the shift in 2012. And this is the era that we get to take advantage of that. That's why it's important for you to know that understanding your awareness and understanding your consciousness is going to be a very big what's the word that I'm looking for? A factor in how you're going to deal with all this money coming your way. You can have all this money and all of a sudden you find that you're very wealthy, but if you're not an aware, conscious, intuitive based person, this money is going to create a problem for you, because if you're operating in lower vibrations, then you're going to have a lower vibration experience of this massive wealth. And that means it's pain, misery, suffering, lots of pain, lots of problem, people coming after you, people attacking you, people trying to steal your money. If you are in a higher consciousness state, the money then serves a purpose. It becomes a service provider to be in harmony, to not have to worry, to not have any anxiety, and to help others. Now that's the real reason behind what's happening with all of us in this currency exchange. Because see, consciousness, it allows you to expand your awareness. Now, let me say one little other thought here before I end the program. As you saw in the video, it was basically the cabal, the dark hats, that were running this Looking Glass project, and it just scared the crap out of them because they saw their demise. They saw it. So they shut it down. There are rumors, now this is rumors only, that's all I can say, but when President Trump became president, he had the Looking Glass project reopened, and he was able to use it and to put probabilities into it to know the decisions that he needed to make to help what he called drain the swamp. Now, in my personal opinion, this is just my opinion, because he had access to that and he had awareness of it, that is why there are so many attempts to destroy that man. Now, these people don't consciously know that they're attempting to do that, but it's like the people who run this type of a system, they have the ability to influence the thoughts of people who can have impacts on his lives, the various judges, etc. All this attempt to try to shut him down, and they're trying to destroy him, is because they know if he truly is able to step in, become president, and do what he wants to do, it's the end of their story. It's a demise for them. And that's why I think we're seeing this big, huge, dramatic shift and change that's taking place around Trump. Because we have to realize we have never, ever, ever in the history of the United States seen a president or former president so deliberately attacked as he is. They were going after him before he was elected because they know, they've probably seen in the looking glass, and they know that he is the person that has the ability to create a very healthy change that can bring about in our world. Okay, so, all right, so I'm being told the guy in the video, I've got that one person is saying his name is Bill Wood, another person is saying his name is Bill Good. I don't know who it is, but all I know is that it's a great video. And as always, this program is basically, it's, I always save the program. I save it into a YouTube file, and then I send it out to you in the next day or two, so you'll be able to watch that again, okay? So that's all I've got tonight, folks. And because the Blog Talk Radio isn't working, I'm not able to take in any calls, so all I would say is thank you for joining me tonight, and we should see you next week. Okay? Thanks a lot. Okay. Bye-bye.